Hi, this is my first interview tape here. I've got Doyle Taylor from our GIS system group here at Mark West. Doyle wanted to interview you today and kind of talk to you about some questions regarding management styles and different leadership issues in the organization. So why don't you introduce yourself for us and we'll go from there.
Doyle Taylor. I'm the Enterprise GIS Manager for MPLX Mark West Endeavor. I've been doing this roughly 25, 26 years in the industry. I've been with the company, it'll be 10 years this year. Previously, I've worked at multiple consulting companies and other engineering companies. I came here, the Director of Engineering at one time, I'd worked with him at one of my first jobs, and he knew me and a position came open, and so he asked me if I'd be willing to come over and interview, and came over and interviewed and came in here, and at the time I was the only GIS person, and it's kind of grown to be a little bit of a monster. So we have a pretty good GIS group here now, good sized, and support a lot of areas in the company. So
Great. One of the things that we've been studying about in the class is ethics in particular. Can you describe a time you had to make a difficult ethical decision, and how did you reach your decision, and what did you decide to do?
along with our code of conduct, I mean, there's a lot of things that are ethical. The one that comes to my mind is the previous company I work for. They're always, I mean, they depend on companies like us for work. They're a consulting company. And so, of course, with them knowing me, they've always called me and go, hey, you got any work for us to do? And what I always tell them is, look, I'm willing to introduce you to people, but that's as far as I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to go put in a good word for you. I mean, if someone asks me, I'll say, yeah, they do a good job, but I'm not going to bend over backwards to try to get them work. So, I mean, as far as an ethical decision, that's something that, and they know that and they understand that, but that's something I'm not willing to go above and beyond because of simply how it could look from within the company here of if I was to go over. There's always rumors and you hear people getting kickbacks and stuff like that, and I just don't ever want to be perceived like that.
Great, thank you. What do you look for when you hire someone? You hire someone new to the organization. What characteristics are you looking for?
That's kind of a tricky one. I mean, of course, you want them to have the knowledge and the experience, but more than that, you want to kind of, I try to get a gauge of their personality and how they might fit within the group, and I mean, it's always a turkey shoot kind of because some people interview really well, and so you kind of sometimes it's just a shot in the dark. But I always try to find somebody that has the experience that I know can do the work, but also on a personality side, someone who might fit within the group and not be somebody, because in our work we have to work with each other a lot, and so someone who's more of a lone wolf that doesn't work well within a group setting may not be the best fit. They may have all the expertise in the world, but if they're not going to contribute to the group work, then this probably wouldn't be the best fit for them.
Thank you. This one again, I think, is kind of closer to us more recently. We kind of came up with a question around organizational change, and you know, we describe a time when the organization went through major changes in personnel or structure. What issues need to be considered with people and how they interact and perform while the reorganization is ongoing and afterward?
With the organizational change, it's stressing enough. So from a management side of things, you kind of have to weigh out the balance of giving people information to where they're still informed, but then again, there's some information we can't give due to being a manager. We know certain things that shouldn't be available to the great masses of what's coming up. So I mean, that balance was kind of difficult during our organization change. I knew of folks that was getting let go that I had to hold on to that information for a week or so because with my group, they had spread out that whole thing. And so, I mean, and of course, people's always asking, what do you know? What do you know about things? And so you have to, it's kind of tough to figure out what you can tell them, what you can. Some things you can't because HR needs to deal with it or whatever. So, I mean, that was probably one of the toughest things with our organizational change that we went through.
Yeah, it was a tough time, I think, especially being in the management.
Well, I mean, even you have to also take the people that report to you and deal with that. But then on top of that, we had my personal stress over everything, over not knowing if I was going to have a job or if I did, what the organization was going to look like, who I reported to, and all that. But I mean, it all worked out in the end.
So, with that transition, I know, we've discussed multiple times that there are underperforming employees in that instance. And, what do you do to work to motivate those employees, or what have you done when you've had those situations in the past?
I mean, I've within the group, I've inherited some employees that were underperforming. And I mean, you bring them in and you talk with them and try to tell them where they're falling short or what you expect or what the expectations of the company is, and try to coach them through it. And I've had them to where after I've had that conversation with them, they do really good for a while and their performance goes way up. But then a couple of months later, it goes down. So you have the talk again. And then I always kind of go with the 3-strike rule type of thing. So, I mean, you do this for a few months and then it's time to start talking about, okay, if they're the best fit for the company. Now the reorg kind of helped with that some, but outside of that, I mean, you try to coach them up and try to tell them what's expected and this or that. And people are either going to do what's expected or they're not. I mean, after giving them a few chances, that should tell you as a manager if they're going to be able to succeed in the role they're in.
Great. With some self-reflection, how have you seen your leadership style change from when you first started supervising to now?
When I first started supervising, the transition from going from working and doing everything and having more control over it being done, because most of the time I know if I do it, then it's done to my satisfaction, and I probably tend to have a high level of expectation on things for my own work. But transitioning over to a supervisor manager, trying to delegate work out and trust the people that report to me to do that work was the hardest thing. And even now, to an extent, sometimes it still is, because there's things I know that I can do and how long it'll take me, and if I do it, I know it'll be done right, but I may not always have time to do it, so I have to trust other people. So learning to delegate things was probably the hardest thing for me personally.
Do you have someone that impacted you and caused you to become a better leader? And what was it about that person that made that happen?
Oh, I think I've had multiple people. I mean, even you, and I probably never told you this, but even some of the managers here, we have wonderful examples of other leaders and talking with each other, bouncing ideas off of each other. Jim Alexander's one.
I miss Jim.
Jim was a good one to sit down and talk with, and I mean, he even changed some of the ways I do things. I mean, there was some things he did that I was like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not doing that. But I mean, Jim was someone who, talking with him, and he'd offer ideas and suggestions of how he handled things in the past. And you try them and they work. And so, but I mean, just even around the company, a lot of the leadership we have here is really good, and we can kind of glean off each other and, hey, this is how I handle things, or this is what I would do. And I mean, I even try to do that with other people too, give my experience and my thoughts and processes of what it was. And maybe it'll help somebody and maybe it won't. But I mean, I also try to listen to other managers and stuff on how they handle things, and maybe will be a solution to an issue I'm having.
What training, education, or benefits does the company offer to help employees invest in their family relationships and their personal development? What do you see there?
We have the reimbursement for schooling. I know that's a major one that a lot of people use. I have a couple of employees that are currently taking advantage of that. And then we have the NPC online training, which some of it I don't think applies to our group, but then there's a lot of it that does. And I think it's good training to have just in general if it doesn't apply to our direct jobs. And I know there's some other programs within the company, some of the network stuff and different things like that. So the company has a lot, but probably the main one that's used is the college reimbursement or tuition reimbursement program.
How do you check in and monitor, how your people are doing, maybe mentally, psychologically? How do you check in with those folks that are working for you to make sure they're doing all right?
This is actually something I got from Jim. Before I would just call occasionally or email or pop in their office and check in on them occasionally. But with Jim, he set up weekly meetings with all of his direct reports, and that was something I'd never done. I'd heard of people doing it. So I now have a weekly 15, 20, 30-minute meeting with each of my folks. And I mean, and I kind of try to style it the way Jim did because I thought it was a great way of doing things. Jim always made it to where he said that was my meeting with him to talk about work or anything that's going on, check on it. So that's kind of what I do. And a lot of times the meetings, we'll talk about work stuff and what they're working on, but more it's talking about personal things or getting to know them or them getting to know me. And I think it makes a better communication with me and them.
More of a human connection.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. I agree. I think part of our job sometimes is counselor just as much as it is to be the boss, right?
I would agree on that.
Well, Doyle, I really want to thank you for the couple of questions today and whatnot. If I have any follow-up questions, I'll let you know. But thanks for taking some time out today. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.